Good morning, members. I think social work has brought the sun back to Dumfries and Galloway, so we can all rejoice. Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Social Services Committee. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available on the Council website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guideline, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the chats function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do that on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made. No material should be posted in the chat if it is intended as part of the discussions. The usual standing orders apply, including that votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please type in the chat so we can keep chat on the meeting being quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. And finally, please focus on contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to your recommendation. Thank you. I wanted to acknowledge this morning that this is indeed a significantly busier agenda than usual. And I'd also like to acknowledge that several members have approached myself, the Vice Chair and Stephen around the paucity of reports recently. Stephen's working really hard at the moment with colleagues to develop a forward plan that will be shared with each of the political groups and the social work spokespersons for any comments, additions and amendments, which is extremely positive. And with that, he'll be bringing regular reports, not just on the non-delegated social work services, which are children, families and justice, but also reports in relation to adult social work and adult social care, which we've been asking for a while. And this will be through the regular monitoring of the directions that have come to this council from the IGB, which I think is extremely helpful. So in summary, going forward, everybody, there will be regular reporting on the delegated services through the directions, which will scrutinise the performance and indeed the budget spend. So I think we should all celebrate that. So thank you, Stephen. And before I progress to item 1, I'd like to thank yourself, also Rebecca, and indeed Avril, I'm having my name panics there, Avril, pardon me, for the additional data which has been most helpful, and I can see that we'll be able to have a lot more comparisons going forward, so thank you for that. So item 1, Sarah Redundant apologies and Chair's approval. Claire, can you please provide the Sarah Redundant indicating who's participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Chair. We've got 17 members present this morning, 9 in the hall, 8 on Teams, being Councillors Dashper, Howie, Ingalls, Little, McFarlane, Walters, Wilson and Young. 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Karen Crothers, Councillor Mail and Councillor Scobie. And there's currently 1 vacancy on this committee. Thank you.
Any other mentions? No? Fine, yes. Ian Howie, would you like to come in? We have got the clarification that Councillor Scobie's not here, though. Thank you.
It's just to submit Councillor Scobie's apologies for the meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howie. So I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. So item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? Councillor Dorward, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. It's just it's a tenuous connection, but it's a statement of connection because I'm a member of the IGB.
Councillor Jordan, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. The same as Councillor Dorward, I'm a substitute member of the IJB. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So the minutes of the previous meeting, 24th of April 25, the minutes for approving. Are members happy to approve the minutes? Thank you. So item 4, Social Work Services Data Report. This report is the 3rd iteration of the data report and now able to show activity for Q3 and Q4 for the financial year 24-25. As we build a full year of service activity, this will allow us to identify and review specific trends relating to the data that we provide as we move through 25-26. We must recognise that this work is in progress and look forward to welcoming further developed reports on a 6-monthly basis. Thank you, Avril. Stephen and Avril are available to take questions. I'm not sure, is Rebecca online or not here yet?
She's en route.
She's en route, that's fine. Thank you, Stephen. So any questions, members, on item 4, please? Councillor Dorwood first, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought it was Councillor Durwood or myself.
Councillor Dorwood, I think, was first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo your point about the increase in reporting. It's fantastic to see, and thank you very much for all the hard work behind the scenes that goes into that, that we very often don't appreciate. Massive amount of reporting. This specific report is amazing in terms of data. I know it's going to get better, talking to Stephen, but it's great. So thank you for the reports. It's brilliant and a lot of hard work. But it allows us the opportunity to interrogate in depth what's going on and ask. It's for noting, but we can still ask the questions and interrogate in depth. So thank you so much for it. It's really, really good. So a couple of questions, if I may, to kick off. There's page 16, 4.2.1, increase in need for mental health services of nearly 40%, mainly due to increase in guardianship requests. I think that's a welfare guardianship, isn't it, request, which is most commonly used for people with learning disabilities or those with dementia. Is that the rationale for it? Are we seeing an increase in that? And also an increase in STDCs, which is the route into detention for mental health. That's extremely time resource and intensive and requires follow-up as well. So in terms of capacity and resourcing, are we coping with that? Thank you. That's one question. Another question, would you want me to do them separately or do them
No,
both
just
together?
proceed and we'll note them
Thanks,
down.
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dorwood.
Is page 30. And again, fantastic statistics, but not great reading, is unmet need. You know, we can look at it by area, but I won't look at it by area and be parochial. Just look at it across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway in terms of the number of hours of unmet need is not great. I'm going to ask an obvious question, which I probably will answer to, but why is that? Because I think the people who are watching need to know as well. And is there anything we can do about that at the moment? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dorwood. Stephen, over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorwood. In relation to your question around the increase in mental health officer activity in particular, it is welfare guardianships, you're absolutely right. We are also seeing an increase in familial guardianships as well across the region. And it is largely down to older people, advancing medical conditions, cognitive disorders, etc. So dementia, yes. People with learning disabilities, increasing numbers as well in terms of from childhood to adulthood. So that is absolutely the reasons for those increases. Again, when we have any level of detention certificate, it is a very time-consuming piece of work. Mental health officers are the most precious of social work practitioners. And when I say that, I'm not saying that they are any better or anything else, but in terms of the availability of them, they are so precious that there are very few around Scotland. Probably I think it's still the biggest element of vacancy locally and nationally in terms of what we have. So we do always prioritise, but that does result in waits for people to have assessments done. We clearly prioritise the court process as well in terms of the sheriff expecting reports within a certain time scale. And our MHOs do all of that work, and it's only an MHO that can do that. So yeah, there's a considerable strain. I think you said, are we coping? Just? It is difficult, but we will, you know, like I said, prioritise work. We also constantly ask other social workers within our services if they'd like to become an MHO. There's a 9-month training course for that, and we are successful to varying degrees dependent on people's own development. In relation to unmet need, as this committee is well aware, we've had unmet need in adult social care for quite some considerable time. The reasons are many and varied. It's largely down to the availability of carers to provide the care. We have an ageing population, and our younger population is decreasing at the same time. Our kind of acceleration of an older population is significantly higher than the rest of Scotland. It's increasing. So it is about the availability of people. Anything that you can do was a question within that. I think listen to what, not you, but the council, you know, councillors could, I think it's listen to the information that we bring, look at the issues and the difficulties that we have and make positive decisions that support that. We will see a different type of information come to this committee, as has already been stated by the Chair in relation to regular reporting and scrutinising of the directions that come back. And the provision of adult social care is one of those directions, so we'll have some considerable scrutiny.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Doherty, come back in.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stephen, for that. You know, one of the things that again, you've spoken about and the Chair's spoken about in terms of the financial reporting and having an awareness of the financial challenges that Health and Social Care Partnership faces. And we know there's a shortfall of, I think it's 12-point-something million in Dumfries and Galloway. There's actually a shortfall of 580 million across Scotland. And I think that's, you know, anything we can do is probably look at asking for some more money would be really nice. And I know that's it's not an easy one. But that 580 million equates to 18,000 care home beds and 11,000 nurses that we don't have. So I totally sympathise with the position of our frontline staff who are not managing to meet the unmet need. It's not them, it's the fact that, as you say, we've got an ageing population, we've got less young people or less people willing to work in that area, but we also don't have the financing. And I think that doesn't bode well going forward. That's quite a challenging position to be in. But thank you for that, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Durwood, and your points are well noted. There's a bit of a crisis across Scotland, to say the least, and I know the teams are pushing and working with the IGB and the NHS on, we should get some figures by the middle of June and some new ideas coming forward, actually, which I'm quite excited about, because I know Stephen's been working really hard on that. So, Councillor Jameson, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. And again, thanks for the increased information that you're giving us. I do note on page 15, 3.3, you acknowledge the fact that data alone without context is sometimes confusing and less than helpful at times, because it can either paint a bad or a good picture. So we really do need the context, not just from individual case studies, but a wider idea of the context. I'll focus my question basically on families and children. Because your staff is stretched and you've got an enormous workload, which we can all acknowledge, how much effort and time can you afford to look at like sort of early intervention? I know that your primary objective is to look after the most vulnerable, the most serious, and that's obviously the case. You need to prioritise these, but there's a lot of families that struggle at an earlier stage than that, and they might just have difficulties managing their children for whatever reason without being judgmental, and they can't get to school, or they do get to school, but they're, to be blunt, they're smelly, they're not ready to be at school and things like that. It's a big ask, and it's not just social work, that's education, and it's the employment people as well. But can we, as a corporate, have that kind of motivation to look at when we've got the time and we've managed the stick and plaster stuff? How can we, as a council, work harder to support families and children to get a better start in life? And we touched on mental health. That's critical, because if a child's got mental health, it puts pressure on the family, and if the parents have got mental health, it puts pressure on the children. And from my specialist subject, which is the education stuff, we know that a lot of kids, children, young people are really struggling at school, and they can't get out of it through no fault of the parents. So my question in brief is, how can we do some more early intervention to identify situations whereby we could help the parents and the children and education staff and employer pathways, so that we can reduce the need for the future?
Thanks, Councillor Jameson, for that, and points well made. Stephen Morgan, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Jameson. It's a critically important point you make around early intervention. And what we have locally is a Children's Services Planning Group, which looks at all children's services in the region. That planning group is jointly operated by the Council, the Health Board, Third Sector and other partners, including the Scottish Children's Reporters Administration. And that has the duty to strategically plan all services for children and the families across the region, not just the social work services. So it's in that space that we look at where we can do better earlier intervention and integration. Indeed, a report's coming to full council, annual report on the Children's Services Plan. Is it next week, week after? I forget when full council is. Apologies. So we are looking at that there. We also continue to look at, you know, each child and family. So when social work with a child in a family who is reaching that, if we call it the statutory level, it's horrible language, but I'll use it. There are also quite often other children in that family who need lower level support, and we would pick up, you know, like a whole family approach in such circumstances. But your point's absolutely right in terms of how do we identify those children earlier, and how do we develop other services. So the Children's Services Planning Group are actively looking at that. Indeed, there was a meeting around whole family wellbeing just this morning in terms of what our local approaches would be. It's also becoming an increasing focus of the Scottish Government currently in relation to whole family wellbeing. So we'll await further policy direction as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stephen. I think there's a bit of work
Just a
going
quick follow-up. Yeah, I'm really pleased, and we'll certainly study the service plan and try and, if like, support and challenge it, because I think it's quite difficult to see the wood for the trees sometimes because everybody's under so much pressure, but the schools in particular have a great deal of difficulty because they've got inclusion problems, they've got ASN needs and all the rest of it, and that the connection between social services, I've mentioned this many times, social services, education, but also employment, you know, pathways for young people. That, you know, a lot of avenues are shut before they've even squeaked the door open, sort of thing, because of family circumstances. And we know that teachers are under pressure to teach, but also look after their well-being and all the rest of it. So any 2 + 2 makes 5. If we can actually get that coordinated, so that if a school identifies a child that's got real problems, and I know there is avenues for that now, but if we can improve that, it can help everybody. So I'll leave it at that because the Children's Services Plan's coming out, and we can study that and see if there's, you know, if there's anything we can add to that. So thank you anyway.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jameson. Councillor Jordan, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, one of the questions has already been asked by Councillor Jameson, and that was around what are we doing to sort of help those children that are experiencing, because I see neglect and emotional abuse are the highest. So what are we doing with those families? But you've already answered that. So I had another question, well, another 2 questions, if that's okay. One was about the unmet need. So I wanted to ask what that actually looks like and felt like for our people that are having that unmet need. What does that look like? I'd like to understand it better. And my other question is just a quick point about the CSE. I see in Q3 and 4 that there's been no CSE reported. Oh, I'm sorry. So the CSE is on page 33. Thank you. So there's no CSE reported in quarters 3 and 4. So just questioning that, I suppose. And yeah, so again, just trying to understand how that might feel and look to a person with that unmet need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Stephen Morgan, thank you.
Again, excellent questions. And before I answer, what I'll say is when we come to the next iteration of this report, this is the type of questions that we will already be asking and answering, so you can have further scrutiny. But I'm really pleased that you're asking such detailed questions today. So in terms of what does unmet need look like, I mean, it varies from person to person, but I'll just be really clear. We have an eligibility criteria here in Dumfries and Galloway, as does the rest of the country. And when we assess somebody's having critical need, and that's the highest level, that's the type of unmet need we're speaking about. We only meet that critical level of need. So it's people who have been assessed as being really vulnerable in their own homes, who require support, and that might be, you know, anything between a visit a day to 4 visits a day to do various things, and it depends on the individual person. So it means that they are not getting those needs met by us as a local authority, via the Health and Social Care Partnership. So somebody else is stepping in. Unpaid carers will be largely stepping into those spaces, and in some instances it might unfortunately mean that a person has an adverse event and might end up in hospital, as an example, if they can't have the needs met. So it varies from person to person. In terms of when we look at, say, 3,500 hours a week unmet need, which has been a, kind of a baseline figure, if you like, that equates to around about 300 to 350 people in terms of an average of 10 hours a week. So in terms of the scale, hours are one thing, but when you put that to how many human beings is that, it tends to be 300 to 350. And in relation to CSE, so for clarity for probably members of the public, that's childhood sexual exploitation we're speaking about. The zero reading is just that. It's where we haven't identified that as a particular form of abuse in that quarter. That's not uncommon that it hasn't been identified. It's one of the most hidden forms of abuse amongst young children, and not just young children, older children as well. And similarly, when we look at sexual abuse, which tends to be abuse from somebody that the person is known to, those figures are often quite low in reporting, and you'll see that as well. And again, that's because of the particularly hidden nature of that type of abuse, and it tends to get reported at a later stage in somebody's development.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Stephen, for this very comprehensive item. I'm looking at page 26, self-directed support and the various 4 options that are available there. Now, obviously, you've talked at length, and we're all very aware of the unmet need for persons requiring care. And one of the possible solutions is to grow the self-directed support. Now, I note that the direct payments option 1 is slowly increasing, whereas other options are more or less staying the same. But it is a large and pleasing number of packages that are being met. Now, I know that self-directed support run by the client, shall we say, is very complicated. They're responsible for holiday pay, insurance pay, etc., as well as running payroll. And I'm wondering, managing that by the council is very time consuming and labour intensive. Are we at a limit of our support levels within the council for trying to promote self-directed support? And on a very personal level, I always feel that the best givers of self-directed support and care is relatives or friends. Now, friends can be included in packages of care, but close relatives can't. And some close relatives are probably running up costs, say, travelling from Castle Douglas to Dumfries every evening to look after a loved one. Is there any way we can pay compensation to family members who are involved in self-directed support packages? Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Rebecca, are you able to answer? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Young. What I would say is, obviously, self-directed support encompasses the 4 options, and the increase to option 1 is possibly primarily due to the fact that we have a lack of carers, so formal carers. So this means that people are having to look at different ways. I would say, in terms of family members, we do have exceptions where family members are paid to provide support to loved ones. So in terms of the ask there to compensate, that those opportunities and avenues to do that already exist. So I usually get them; they come to me, and we try to ensure that we're constantly looking outside of the family also, because we're conscious of the fact that family carers do an awful lot, and what we want to do is to continue. We don't want to walk away and forget them once something's in place. We continually look for other opportunities to ensure that they get carers respite, etc. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Rebecca. I think the dynamics change within care packages all the time, depending on the health of the person and also the family. So thank you for that. So are there any more questions? That's fine. Thank you, members. We can now go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note the content of the social work Services Activity Data Report provided at Appendix 1, which sets out activity for adult services, children and families services, justice, social work, resettlement, housing options and homelessness care service, comments, complaints and workforce and finance. So we now go on to item 5, Head of Service End of Year Assessment from 1st of April 24 to 31st of March 25. This report sets out the summary of performance from period 1st of April 24 to 31st of March 25, which shows a number of areas of significant progress. Appendix 1 of the report provides the high-level summary with context of progress and achievements set out in the body of the report for each project. For success measures that were not within the reporting period, these are set out in the exceptions report, setting out the current performance with those required to be carried forward to 25-26 and are set out in the 25-26 service plan. Where the project is currently reported at 0%, this is not reflective of the current position, as the work undertaken does not yet fully meet the milestone data set. The service risks set out for 24-25 in Appendix 1 details the risk factors, current risk and target risks, and are not plotted for the new risks in year 1. So I hope that makes sense, everybody. So Rebecca Aldridge is here this morning to answer any questions, members. Thank you. Councillor Jordan, please.
Thank you again, Chair. I wanted to just ask a question about on page 31, no 81, I'm sorry, I've not got my glasses, so I'm guessing. There is, at the bottom of page 81, it refers to the number of homeless applications received where someone has been a looked after child by the local authority more than 5 years ago. And I suppose I just want to know what we're doing about that, because it bothers me that our looked after children 5 years down the line or more than 5 years down the line become homeless. I suppose I just want to ask a bit more detail about how that happens and what we try and do to protect our previous looked after children going forward in life to prevent them falling on bad situations like being homeless. Thank you. I appreciate that's a bit of an airy-fairy question, but I just want to understand what support we're giving those children all through and to try and prevent that sort of stuff happening. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, it's a bit airy-fairy. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine, Councillor Jordan.
Oh, thank you, Councillor. That particular figure is based on looked after children across Scotland, so they don't necessarily have been looked after within this local authority area. So it maybe looks a bit higher figure than what you would expect to see for Dumfries and Galloway. In terms of people who come down through the service who've been looked after over 5 years ago, quite a lot of those will have a number of issues with them, and quite a lot of them will be repeat offenders who are going through prison and things. So yes, I think there is work that should be done at an earlier age, and homeless basically pick up the pieces of that when the person presents.
Thank you for that, Heather. Stephen, if you wouldn't mind coming in on the back of that just for a bit more, thank you.
Yeah, an additional piece, we have a corporate parenting group, and yesterday we launched the corporate parenting plan for 25 to 28, and one of the specific focuses of that is good quality homes for children and for young people and when they enter adulthood as well. So there's a significant amount of work about the availability of different types of accommodation, supported accommodation, etc. Because Heather's absolutely right, you know, the trauma that these young people have experienced in childhood and often into their early adulthood as well is quite significant. So we're trying to do as much at a preventative stage as we possibly can, but it is a challenge. What I would add to that as well is I think one of the other reasons why we have slightly higher numbers than we would anticipate, as Heather said, this is like children from anywhere in Scotland, and we already know, as reported previously to this committee, we've got a lot of private providers of children's houses. So sometimes we get children wanting to settle in the region as well. So that would increase our numbers compared to what you might ordinarily expect.
That's really helpful, Stephen. Thank you, and we'll look forward to that report coming forward. Councillor Walters, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the key achievements list, which starts on page 70. So it's good to see you listed out all the things that are being done and the successes. But the first one, 4.4.1 on page 70, it's a great success with the traineeship programme delivered with 10 trainees due to qualify between August and October. But then the recruitment is for 4 traineeships. I just wondered why there was this difference between the 10 and the 4, whether it's an accumulation of traineeships that are finishing, that have started at different times, or whether we've just not been able to provide as many traineeships starting soon. That would be my first question. My second question is on page 72, 4.4.11, about the introduction of mental health officers. Couldn't somebody just clarify to me what does that mean to have a mental health officer casual contract? Does that mean we're taking people in from different contractors to cover this area or whatever? So that's my 2 questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Stephen Morgan first, please. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Walters. In relation to the traineeships, you answered your own question. It is about the different routes that people are trained and the different finishing points. We have a set staffing budget, and we utilise that across a whole range of different training options and opportunities. So what we have currently available is 4. I think they've closed in terms of, just checking with Avril that they've closed. So yeah, it is about different starting points. Some years we might have up to 10, other years it might be as low as 4. And partway through the academic process as well, you might have people dropping out, and then you might have another opportunity. So it just changes the timeline. So that figure's never the same. And again, in relation to MHOs, we do occasionally use, I think agency staff is the term that a lot of people use. We'll take on a casual contract, or sometimes we'll have people who have moved into retirement who fancy doing a little bit of part-time work, and we might be able to do it that way. So MHOs have already been mentioned today. Any MHO we can get, we'll take. If there are peaks in activity, we'll try and go out with our current resource as well to do what we can. So it tends to be agency staff or people who have recently retired who want to do a little bit of work.
That's really helpful, Stephen. Rebecca, if you'd like to come in on the back, thanks.
Yeah, it's just to supplement Stephen's comments in terms of the casual contracts. They are predominantly within our own service, so they are predominantly people who have retired and wish to continue in some way offering their services, and also to some staff who work part-time, for example, but have decided that they would want to supplement their wages in that respect. So we do use very, very occasionally agency staff, because they're as difficult to come by as any other MHO, and also very, very expensive. So we do try to consume our own smoke in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That's helpful. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, good morning, Chair, and thank you for this report. As previous comments, it's certainly more comprehensive than what we've received previously, and we're grateful for it. Looking at pages 80 and 81, there's comments in relation to our responses to complaints, stage 1 and stage 2, and it does say that there's an exception report, but unfortunately that doesn't actually shed a great deal more light on it. And my view on this is that when we have complaints, it's an opportunity to get things right, to put it right, and get some learning from that, so that we improve as a service, and the service received by the members of the public is improved as well. So I think that that's something really we could do with a bit more insight into. But moving on from that, looking at pages 85, it talks about adults supported at home, and we've got 3 there where we've got data not yet available. But certainly in the last year, 23-24, we were quite well down. And this is about people's experiences of care at home, and do they feel that their life improves, that they've been involved, etc. And I think that there's something there that we need to be trying to do, because it seems like a very poor response overall. Also interested to know why we haven't got any data for 24-25. These are 6-monthly reports, so if we could get a 6-monthly report in there rather than the whole year, that would even be helpful, because it would sort of show us a direction of travel perhaps. And then lastly, excuse me, lastly on pages 86, 88, 90 and 91, we've got a risk register where we have no original risk and no target risk. And we've got that for 2 or 3 of those. And then when we get to page 98, we've got, sorry, so page 96, we've got a current risk where we're significantly in the red with the target for the yellow, but there's no original risk. So again, we've got no means of understanding where we are or where we're going from, or you know. And to be honest, I looked forward in the next item, item 6, and these risk reports are exactly the same. So can you confirm whether it is just the same risk report? Because the wording's the same. That's it. Is it a typo or is it the same data? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Over to yourself, Stephen. Thanks.
So, in relation to complaints, we investigate every complaint really, really rigorously. The nature of complaints for people who use social work services are quite often complex and require an extension to the standard timescales. And we would rather do things right than do things quickly. So that's, you know, we certainly do learn from mistakes and errors and where we can put things right. We absolutely do. Some of the data, so where we have new targets, for example, and that's why there's no data for 24-25. It'll show us in the long trend column there it says new. So that's why there's no data for that yet. That's new moving forward. The risk one, absolutely, Councillor McFarlane. I was speaking to colleagues in other parts of the council, and the target risk, the process that we currently go through, and it is flawed, so we are going to amend this, is we tend to wait until after the service plan's been considered by yourselves and then go and populate the target risk into the future. So we're going to change that, and we will we're going to bring this risk matrix back to the next committee so you can see what the target risk would be, and we give a bit more detail around that. So, you know, you're absolutely right to point that out. And in terms of the next plan, the wording's quite the same, because the risks to vulnerable people tend to be the same risks around resource availability, etc. So we use common language.
Thank you, Stephen. Is that okay, Councillor McFarlane?
Yeah, I'll take it up with Steve after any little nuance in there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Dorward, please.
Thank you. Don't normally do that. But I'm quite good at talking without a microphone anyway, some folk might say. But thanks for that. Thanks for that. It's actually page 85 as well. Councillor McFarlane's asked about the data not yet available, but my question, he's asked quite a few of the questions I was going to ask, but the other question is about percentage of carers who feel supported to continue in their caring role. One, the target isn't very high. It's 34%, which isn't very ambitious in terms of how we support our carers, arguably. And two, we're not meeting even that small target. So it would be really useful to know what are we doing about it, and why we set a target so low, which is alarming, and why is that not even being met? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. Stephen, thanks.
Okay, so these sets of key performance indicators come from the local government benchmarking framework, and it's national data, and that's why there's no data available for these ones. The percentages are low because that's what people tell us about our local data. It's also not uncommon, if you look at like our comparators across Scotland, that is a figure that's traditionally quite low. And therefore we set a target for improvement that might be achievable, as opposed to saying we want like 100% target. All of these targets, when it comes to satisfaction, should be 100%, but when people are not satisfied, it's difficult. What we do though is we ask people ourselves who we work with specific questions around, are you satisfied with your care? And we do that through our review process as well. We have no kind of detailed breakdown about the response other than the data in here in terms of what are the reasons. So it's difficult for us to specifically address on an individual basis. So what we do, like I said, alongside that is our review process. We ask people for satisfaction, and the figures we get back ourselves are sometimes different. So it's a one that's, you know, it's an appalling figure, absolutely. But like I said, it's fairly consistent that data comes back low across the country. If we look back over all of the years, it's been low here too, hence a low target as well.
Yes, Councillor Dorward, come back in, thanks.
Thanks for that. It's challenging when the figures are set by, well, it's local government benchmarking figures, they're set by Scottish Government. So it's challenging, you can't ignore them. And we can't ignore them being reported. But you might want to challenge government in terms of some of the targets they're setting, because they're not achievable. And it's like, what are we doing about, what are we as a country, what are we as a local authority doing about that? I'm not asking you to answer that, but I think I'm just making it as a statement. It's like some of these targets are, you know, the figures that we're looking to achieve, the targets are not great. And Councillor McFarlane's already alluded to that and talked about that previously. But we're almost like we're doing the same thing and not really getting much further forward. And I think that's the concerning thing for me, is that we seem to be stuck doing the same thing, measuring the same thing, but not actually improving it. And there might be some value in, at some point, reviewing that. And how can we do that? Can we actually advocate with Scottish Government and say, you know, we're doing the same thing, we're not actually achieving, the outcomes aren't improving. In fact, they're getting worse, according to this, and certainly on page 85, can we look at a different way of measuring things that gives us more information and maybe includes, you know, it's a downward, we're on a downward slope with these figures, which is really concerning. And since they're getting worse, so how do we measure, maybe that's just how we do it, maybe just we would accept that they're getting worse. But I'm not here to sit here and accept things are getting worse and can't really do anything about it. I think that's the challenging thing. I know that you spoke, Chair, about new things happening and things and doing things, but our carers are the biggest percentage of people that without them, the figures would be 1,000 times worse that we're looking at. So, you know, there must be something we can do there. I know there's a strategy, the IGB's put out a carer strategy, to look at that, but how do we look at collectively supporting these people? Because if they go, then we've lost the backbone of looking after the most vulnerable people in Dumfries and Galloway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dorward. I think from a carer's perspective, I suppose the figures are very difficult, and I'll speak from my own heart on this one. When you're a carer, you're actually looking after people who are becoming progressively more ill, or you're looking after a person who's perhaps disabled, say a young person, and that situation never changes. So you don't see the end of the tunnel. So I suppose when anyone's questioned, you're going to feel despondent and quite low. So I think it's a very difficult thing to measure, to be fair. And obviously with transport becoming so difficult across Scotland, it's very, very difficult to give carers respite breaks at the moment across the whole of Scotland. So anyway, I digress from this report, but I get entirely where you're coming from. I suppose if any of us in this room who are carers answered that question, you'd probably answer it in that manner, to be fair. So it's a difficult one. Thank you, though, for your questions. Councillor Jameson, is that right? Yes, thanks.
Yes, just to pick up on Councillor Dorward's comments, which are quite very pertinent. One, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the local government benchmarking is a COSLA and Scottish Government and IS, whatever that is. It's a corporate thing that's been agreed. But the most important thing about the local government benchmarking is comparators. So regardless of the targets, we should be comparing ourselves with other local authorities to give us an idea. You know, are we an outlier? Are we better or are we worse? And what are other? I think the whole idea of local government benchmarking is for COSLA to get all local authorities to learn from each other and not to be shy about saying they seem to be doing better than us, so what can we do that they're not doing? So I think it's really important, and I would ask, and I've banged on about this education, the local benchmarking figures and comparators should be brought to the attention of the committee and not just somewhere found on a website. They're very important to give members an idea of just where we are placed in comparison with other local authorities. And that's not to give anybody a kick or anything else. It's a benchmarked in my dairy business, and I could see why am I not doing as well in that, what are other folk doing. So it's really important, I think, that we actually take cognizance of that and be fully candid about it, so that we, as a group, we can see where we're going wrong, where we're going right, etc., etc. So, but I agree that we need to have ambitions above mitigation and not accepting a low target, because that's what somebody set for us. So that was my only comment on that. And I suppose my ask is that local government benchmarking, I've seen it, and the social service do okay. So it'd be good for the committee to have it in front of them so that it can be discussed.
Thank you. Points taken, Councillor Jameson. And Stephen, thanks.
Yeah, it's a very valid point, and we'll certainly look at that in our forward plan, because we do look at the comparators. We know how well we're doing compared to other people. I'd like to add a comment to what Councillor Darwood said as well in relation to unpaid carers being, you know, the backbone of the system. You're absolutely right. If unpaid carers stopped caring, the whole system will crash overnight. And we do value them. We do work with the carer centre as well. What's difficult about figures such as this is we as a service and we as a council might not actually be working with the majority of the carers. So this isn't necessarily a reflection on what we're doing, but it is a reflection on how carers feel in their entirety. So, you know, we certainly further our engagement with the Carers Centre. We have regular meetings arranged with them to look at such issues as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Stephen. It's appreciated. So we can now go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note their performance for adult services, homelessness options and homelessness service plan for the period 1st April 24 to 31st March 25, which includes council plan delivery, service plan delivery and change and improvement activities as set out in Appendix 1. We now go to item number 6, Head of Service End of Year Assessment, April 24 to 31st March 25 for Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Service Plan 24-25. Again, this report sets out the summary of performance for the period 1st of April 24 to 31st March 25, which shows a number of areas of significant progress. Appendix 1 of the report provides a high-level summary with context of progress and achievements set out in the body of the report for each project. Where a project is currently reported at 0%, this is not reflective of the current position, as the work undertaken does not yet fully meet the milestone data set. The service risks set out for 24-25 in Appendix 1 details the risk factors, current risk and target risks, and are not plotted for new risks as yet for year 1. Rebecca and Avril are happy to take any questions, members. I'll open up the floor. Okay, we have no questions. Oh, pardon me, Councillor Jameson, thanks.
Sorry. Page 113, 4.4.4 refers to strategic outcome 14. We get it right for every child. My query and question is we certainly have a lot of reports. As already referenced, we have the Children's Servicing Plan, we've got the Corporate Parent Plan, we've got the Promise, we've got Morgan Report on ASN and Audit Scotland. The 5 focus work streams are a safe and stable home, access to education, being healthy, being involved and included, and moving on transitions. There's a lot of crossover here, and I've read all these plans. The one that interests me most is how far does corporate parenting go? Because we have the Promise that's focused really on children in care, if I'm correct in saying that, and there's corporate parenting. I'm wondering how far that goes, because that implies getting right for every child in corporate parenting implies that we are responsible for every child. And without being too generalistic, not every children are safe and stable at home, not every children has proper access to education or being healthy or involved and included or moving on to good transitions. So again, it's not just social service, it's beyond that. So my query is, these are all really big papers. How much overlap is there and how much collaboration is in between these? The key one is, I've read corporate parenting again, and I just wonder, how deep does it go?
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Stephen?
Yeah, so I'll pick up the point around the Promise and the corporate parenting duties that we all have in this room, and many others do as well. And it's actually kind of flipped from what you said, Councillor Jameson. So the promise is the result of the independent care review of the care system for children in Scotland. And the predominant focus of that review at this moment in time is around whole family wellbeing and preventative services. And that's to ease the pressure on the future system. So the current system, but predominantly the future system. Corporate parenting is a very specific element and responsibility within getting it right for every child, but this is for specific children. And it's those children who were looked after in care experience that we have a specific corporate parenting responsibility for. And the reach is quite far and wide, and we've brought papers around your duties as elected members to this committee. I think we'll maybe do a refresh in the near future for you as well, and we'll bring the corporate parenting plan for your information. There is always overlap in terms of, you know, safe and stable homes, access to education, being healthy, involved, included. That's what all children and young people want to be. Moving on in transitions is a particular issue for those who are care experienced and looked after. What I can say with confidence, though, is the new plan, which was just launched yesterday at an event, the details within that and the areas of concentration came from our children and young people. It's what they said matters to them, and they're going to actually mark our homework on this. We've got a scorecard for them, and they'll tell us how well we are doing for them. And when I say we, it's the council, it's the health board, police, fire service, Skills Development Scotland, further education establishments. So it's a massive scope, and it's a difficult thing to conceptualise. So the question I would ask any corporate parent, including myself, is what would you do for your own child? And that's the starting point. So yes, there's overlap. This is set out in our strategic outcomes in relation to getting it right for every child, and our action is to, I say ours, it was, is to lead on the development of that corporate parent plan, which we now have. It says 24-27 here. We actually delayed that to get the voice of the children in the centre and for the actions to really reflect what they wanted, because ironically, it was too corporate previously. So we took an extra year to get to the place we want to be. So that plan is now 25 to 28.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back in again, Councillor Jameson? Thanks. Just very quickly, thanks.
Just I don't add to your workload, but you know, we've got a lot of papers to read, etc., and I'm a compulsive researcher, but we talked, you agreed that there was a lot of overlap there. I think it would be helpful for this committee and maybe other committees just that are involved in that overlap, if we could get something, a précis of the main points and the overlaps, etc., so that if we're on other committees, we can refer to them. And I'm referring in particular to the Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Committee. There's an awful lot of stuff there that we could actually bring all our efforts together if the various committee members knew exactly, without reading through thousands of pages of stuff. It would be helpful to get that précis, and maybe references so that we can have them tidily. We can look at the problems, look at this, rather than going through all the websites, etc., etc. I just think that would be helpful from a common sense perspective.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jameson. We've actually taken that on board, and we'll do a briefing for members if that's acceptable to yourself. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Councillor Jordan, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question relating to page 123 about our staff and sickness. Our staff are extremely precious to us. And so I want to ask, what are the reasons the illness days are lost? What are they? So trying to understand if there are things that we can do to help staff there and what we're doing to support them. And also to observe the appraisals on the same page that have been completed, and ask if that's, if we were doing more appraisals, would we be picking up more issues and supporting staff better? So I just wondered if you could speak to that, please, and tell us a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jordan. Stephen, thanks.
I'll start with appraisals. In social work, we have regular one-to-ones with staff, which look at well-being issues, first and foremost. And we then move on to have like more technical and professional supervision within that in relation to somebody's workload and how they are getting on. and we have a specific section around continuous professional development. What we haven't always been good at in the past is formally recording the annual appraisal. But the council has got a new check-in system, and that's making that much more simple. So we have more ongoing formal one-to-ones and support and supervision because of the technical role that we do than most other members of staff. And I'm confident that, you know, we have the right kind of conversations and we get the right type of training, etc., that our staff require against identified needs. In terms of the sickness absence, clearly the days are higher than we would like to be. We've reported many times to this committee that, you know, our staff have too much work. They work too many hours. Our current figures are still showing us that, you know, on average, our social work staff, and when I say social work staff, I'm speaking of frontline staff and those who are paraprofessionals as well, are working at least an extra day a week over and above what we pay them. So that will have an impact in relation to the mental well-being, the physical well-being. So we do see some work-related stress, as an example, but quite often staff will show signs of work-related stress and other kinds of stresses in a physical manifestation. So we're well aware that we need to continue to support our staff. So we've got a particular, through Avril's team actually, we've got somebody leading on well-being and operating well-being sessions. We're really pushing the likes of that, making, you know, different offers for our staff. Walking sessions and things like that, depending on whether people want to join in those. So we've got lots of different things that we do to try and support staff. And just last week, an excellent member of our team, and I will name her publicly, Leanne Henderson, established a group for neurodiverse colleagues, and I was at the first meeting of that group last week, and it was absolutely brilliant. So, you know, there's lots of things that we carry forward, and, you know, we react to what our staff tell us. So there's lots of things that we do there, but we are mindful that we put. We're mindful that our staff put an awful lot of pressure on themselves as well as we putting pressure on them to do the best that they can for vulnerable people. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just an amazing team. But Rebecca would like to come in if that's possible. Then I'll come back to yourself, Councillor Jordan. Is that okay?
Thank you. Again, just to supplement what Stephen's highlighted there, we do work with our colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership also in terms of we have a wellbeing group specific to look at the needs of staff members and have staff members who sit on that group to inform what they believe that they need going forward. We have really good connections to our colleagues within psychological services who also offer psychological support if required to staff members, and that would include children and families as well as adult care if the need was required. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Jordan, thanks.
Thank you very much. And it's heartening to know that you're doing so much for the staff, and those little things that you do, the walks, you know, but maybe even having someone to come in and do a shoulder massage, you know, things like that, they mean a lot. So it's heartening to know that you're doing a lot to support the staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jordan. So we can now go to the recommendation. Members are asked to note the performance for the Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Service Plan for the period 1st April 24 to 31st of March 25, which includes the Council Plan delivery, Service Plan delivery and change to improvement activities as set out in Appendix 1. Is everybody okay? Can we continue to item number 7, please? Yeah. So, Adult Servicing Housing Options and Homelessness Service Plan 25-26. The service plan details the specific actions from the Council Delivery Plan that this service is responsible for, and also detailing key activities and change and improvement activities that the service will deliver during 25-26. Report on progress of delivery will be presented to this committee in December 25. Rebecca's here and is happy to take questions, members. Councillor Dorward, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. Maybe it's just me here. No issues with the plan going forward. It's page 157 is the first question in terms of the resource plan and the budget that estimates summary for the whole of social work services. Now, how do you break that down to adult services, housing options and homelessness service? We've got, in both plans, we've got a collective budget, an overall budget, and I don't understand it at all. I don't know what it means. I've looked at it and I don't know payments to other bodies. I can probably guess what that means. I probably think I know what that means, but I don't understand it. And it would be really useful, and I get it would be more work, because it's you know, and that's like, oh God, more work, to have, if you've got a plan, have the resourcing for the service that's covered by the plan, maybe broadly outlined, if that would be okay. I'm not asking for it right now, and it's just you know, and I know these are all works in progress, and it's very well written, it's very well done, but it's not, so it's not a complaint about the plan in essence. But you know, I'm thinking, oh God, that's pretty high, or that's pretty high, or what does that mean? What do client contributions mean, for example? So perhaps a glossary for us lay people, members, would be useful as well. But it would be interesting to parse it down to what that specific area, just so we've got an idea of how much is being spent on that area as in comparison to other areas. That would be useful. How, you know, it's not about valuing one more than the other, just would be useful. Specific questions on, it's just one, and it's the Strategic Outcome 11, page 159. People have access to services that are modern, efficient and responsive. When we know that, we're trying to look at digital solutions to home care, care at home, etc. Develop and implement a digital strategy to support people at home. And it says linked strategy. What team will do adult care lead homes team? Is that part of the Health and Social Care Partnership? And it says the linked strategy plan is DGC, even digital strategy. Is that linked to the NHS digital strategy? Because I think it wouldn't make sense if we weren't all working together. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Dorward. Rebecca, thanks.
In short, yes, it is. It is linked. It is linked. We work very closely with our colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership and indeed the NHS to ensure that we're not duplicating work and effort, and obviously we have people from the partnership who sit on our digital board. Stephen is part of the national group for that, so we do work collectively on that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Are you fine with that, Councillor Dorward? Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question. So starting on page 162, there are targets that are set there, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how those targets are set, if you could, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who do you want? Thank you, Helen.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. The targets for the homeless data set are usually set using the information around the previous year's Scottish average, plus our own ongoing trends.
Thank you, Heather. Is that fine, Councillor Jordan? Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Picking up on the same page as Councillor Dorward on page 157, I too am interested in what the payments to the other bodies are. It's 67% of the total that we spend on that. £128 million, that's a heck of a lot of money, so it would really be interesting to understand where that is and why we're spending it and other better ways of doing it. In the sort of one below it, the income, we've got other grants, again £14 million. That's a significant amount. It'd be good to understand what that is, as it's almost half of our income. But in the one below, where it talks about the workforce, we've got an ageing workforce, but with a reducing length of service, as the bulk of our staff seem to be between 0 and 5 years. So I'm just wondering if we've got the balance right. Have we got a succession plan for that? And do we have the right balance of full-time and part-time employment? Because we've got 37% full-time and 63% at full-time, part-time. So, you know, have we got the balance right in our workforce, and what is all that money, and where's it coming from and going to? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. Stephen, thank you.
Yeah, I'll pick up on, excuse me, I'll pick up on the financial elements and pass over to colleagues around the workforce. So payments to other bodies, that's effectively the care that we buy. So as an example, we have our own in-house care at home provider, CAS, who provide approximately 20% of care at home across the region. So the other 80% is purchased through other providers. It also includes, you know, children's house accommodation, which we frequently highlight at this committee. So that's the payments to other bodies includes the direct care that we purchase. Also, like where we commission specific services as well. So that's where the bulk of the expenditure for social work and social care in its entirety is spent. As you said, it's a significant figure. In terms around other grants, those would be grants that come in from the different governments at different points, in addition to our core funding, and they are, you know, sometimes ad hoc, sometimes predictable, be linked to specific pieces of work as well. In terms of the workforce questions, I'll pass yourself to Rebecca and possibly Avril in relation to that response.
Thank you, Stephen. Absolutely, succession planning is absolutely vital for ourselves, particularly given the age of the average age of our employees currently. So we do that forms part now of sort of the different areas of social work. So within adult care, for example, we would be looking at the MHO team separately. We would be looking at different teams separately, but we would also be looking across the piece in terms of actually who would want to go on to the training, for example. So that's the kind of work that we're involved in there. In terms of the full-time and part-time, I think what we're trying to achieve is a work-life balance for people, and consequently, people will put in requests to work different times, and we try to accommodate them where we can. We obviously have to also reflect on the needs of the service and the business needs. So it's a constant dialogue between our colleagues on the front line and senior managers in terms of what we need to achieve from a business perspective, but also what we need to achieve from a health and well-being perspective for our employees. So I think that the full-time, so the part-time and full-time, the part-time is reflective of that need to work differently, to work more agile, and also it's reflective of our commitment to colleagues to ensure that they have the work-life balance as well as they can possibly get it. I don't know if you've got anything else to add.
We're currently refreshing our workforce plan, which is an intention to bring it back to the Committee for Information in August time, which covers the initiatives that we're looking at in relation to the workforce matrix.
Thanks very much, Olivia. I think that's helpful, and it is a 24-hour dynamic care service that you are providing here, so that's important. I don't think we've got any more questions, members.
Can I come back in, Chair, please?
You can, Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's really good that you outlined some of the areas in which that expenditure was going at, but I think it really would be useful in future reports if we could actually get a bit of a breakdown in that, because it would help us understand where that money is going into which sort of areas and which sort of organisations, and particularly where we get the best benefit in relation to the balance of part-time and full-time. I've just been trying to flick back to find out in relation to our personal development reviews, the annual review that we do for staff, they were way down as well, and I'm wondering how much of that is impacted on by availability, because also our sickness record was a wee bit high as well in relation to the rest of the council. So, it's, you know, there's a balance to be struck about getting the work-life balance, but I think Rebecca touched on it. It's about the needs of the service as well, and we have to balance the needs of the organisation and the people that we serve with the needs of our staff as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councillor McFarlane. Stephen, thank you.
Yeah, in relation to the financial monitoring, we will bring back regular reports, as we do for the non-delegated services currently, which goes into the detail about how we've spent the money. when we report back on directions and the financial expenditure against them in the future, Councillor McFarlane, that should also make it clearer as to what we're doing with the finances against activity. So that would be part of the forward plan moving forward.
That's great. Thank you very much, Stephen. So we can now go to the recommendation. Members are asked to agree the Adult Services Housing Options and Homelessness Service Plan for 25-26 as set out in paragraphs 4.3 to 4.7 and included as the appendix. Thank you, members. So we move on to item 8, Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Services Service Plan 25-26. This service plan details the specific actions from the Council Delivery Plan that the service is responsible for, and also detailing key activities and change and improvement activities that the service will deliver in 25-26. A report on progress of delivery will be presented to this committee in 2025, and we have Stephen, Rebecca and Avril all here to ask questions. Answer questions even, that might be helpful. Get it right the right way. Members, any questions? No. Okay, thank you very much for that report. We can now go to the recommendation. Members are asked to agree the Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Services Plan for 25-26 as set out in paragraphs 4.3 to 4.7 and included as the appendix. And we now go on to item 9, Social Work Services Residential Children's Houses. Now, this report provides members with a strategic business case to provide new models of delivery for children's residential houses, setting out a strategic case, business needs and existing arrangements together with the current challenges we face and the local needs. Analysis of this, and members are asked to agree with the social work offices in partnership with finance to develop the options regarding operating models and revenue consequences associated with the options set out at paragraph 8.1. Now, we know this is quite challenging, so Stephen's here to answer any questions that members might have going forward with this report. Thank you. Firstly, Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Stephen, for this very comprehensive and interesting report. It's an area that we've been pursuing for several social work committees prior to this, and it's nice to see a very full and interesting read. It's funny, before reading this, I'd previously researched what other local authorities are doing with this residential service for children placed out with the region, and I found that Aberdeenshire have just completed a very similar exercise, and they had very similar numbers to this Dumfries and Galloway report, and the cost of an in-house provision looking after children within the region is very similar to the figures in this report as well, whereas the cost of a child being looked after per week out with the region is about £5,000 per week. If we look at page 210, 4.4.3, the average cost based on 4 beds for the council-owned facility is £209,000, but on the next page at 4.4.6, it says the revenue costs based on our own costs is £706,000 per annum. So, I mean, if we go ahead, as I hope we will, and provide a phased introduction of 2 4-bed units, the savings should be about, what, £1,500 per week per child placed, which is probably about £500,000 over the year once this scheme's up and running. Can I ask, well, I'm very supportive of this move, and I know it'll be a phased introduction, probably take several years recruiting staff, probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 staff per home. Could I ask, is there going to be matching between the present children that we place out with the region with the proposed 8 places that we hope to have within the region? And are any of these children that are placed out with the region placed for educational reasons rather than other reasons? I'm thinking, I don't know, the Doddleton School for the Deaf, etc. Do we pay for that out of this budget, or is that completely out of the educational budget? So the main question, while I'm fully supportive of this report, is the matching and how we will how will it introduce these two homes? And finally, can I make a plea that we are obviously saying one home will be in the west and one in the east. Please don't have homes in very rural locations. Please have them in the centre of urbans where they have access to the gyms and other facilities. So my main question is on the matching criteria, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, some great questions there, Councillor Young. Thank you for that. Stephen, please.
Councillor Young, firstly, thanks for your support and thanks for the questions. In relation to the matching process, like you've said, the establishment of two houses, if that's the route that we decide to go down, will take some time. If we have to build those or if somebody else builds them, we'll deal with that later in different processes. The children that we currently have in care, some of them will have moved on. If they're the younger children, we would absolutely look to be matching those into these positions. But we're already trying to bring as many of the children back as possible. So a year ago, you know, in terms of the children who were in residential care, that wasn't our own provision. The vast majority of those were out of region, and we only had 6 in the local private provision. The number is currently 19, so we've already brought you know, 13 children and young people back into the region, although not our own provision. So just to give assurance that we will continue to do that and not wait for this development. In relation to where we put them, one east, one west, and please don't go for a rural area, I would fully support your views on that, because we want homes for children to be just that, homes, and we want those to be you know, similar to what they would be used to, and the vast majority of our children do live in towns and would like to remain in those. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be pressed on what the locations might be, because that's not my job. That's other colleagues. So hopefully I've covered the main points there, but happy to pick up anything that I might have missed.
Did you want to come back in, Councillor Young? Are you okay?
No, I'm quite happy with that response. Thank you, Chair.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Dorward, please.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, thank you for an amazing, compelling report. You can't underestimate the amount of work that's gone into this. It's fantastic. And what it does is kind of outlines every single thing that's got us here. It's really good. It's really well done. And I've no issues with, I don't think the group has either, supporting progressing the options that we have. What is concerning slightly, and it's not a reflection on staff at all, is the time it's taken to get us here. I raised this issue, I know Councillor Young referred to, we've raised it at a couple of social work committees. I raised it in August 2023 initially. Now it was very mild, but at that point we're talking about, I think, 1.25 million overspend in this service. And it wasn't raised because of that, it was raised because of the vulnerable children who were being basically housed out with the region. And it's great to hear that a lot of them are coming back. So this is, you know, the time it's taken to get us here to look at options is over 2 years. That's concerning about the pace at how the council, and I'm holding the council to account here, not anybody sitting here, moves in terms of what might be quite urgent. What we're then talking about with the options, which I've got no problems with agreeing to, is another 18 months to 2 years to provide 4 spaces in Dumfries and Galloway. Now, that's good that we're doing that. It's great that we're looking at that. It's great that we've got 4 spaces potentially in the West, because that's what we need. But there's so many more children still being housed in residential care in the private sector, which monopolises the industry in Scotland. So we're doing something really positive, and that's commendable. Thank you for that. Thank you for moving forward. It would be good to get some more detail on timescales for reports back to this committee in terms of at 2.3 it says a report will come back at a future date. When will that be? Because I think time is of the essence here. I know capital spend may be involved, and that will be challenging because we have very little in our capital reserve. We have nothing in the capital reserves. It's all committed, but this is a really fantastic initiative, and I'm so pleased that it's come forward. But I think, could we look at maybe increasing that from 4 to 6 or 8, another one somewhere in the middle, I don't know, another house? Or is that too much? I'm just putting that, I think we're being quite, I think we're not being ambitious enough here. That's my perspective. I think it's great that what we're doing, I think it's great that we're moving forward on this. We've adopted a whole council approach under the restructuring process. I think we need to be more whole council focused and move faster with this one, because it's really, it's not just about the money. The amount we're spending is massive, and it's hit the headlines in the press. You know, 9.5 million will focus attention on things. But it isn't just about that. It's about our children and young people and housing them in a place where we can actually look after them properly, and send them off properly to be responsible citizens. So there's that. I'm asking, can we put another, could we perhaps look at, when it comes back, be a bit more ambitious here as a council and as an administration, and add another 4 on, that'll give us 12, which might, I mean, that might not be feasible, but why not, given the numbers might drop. I understand that. And you can talk to that, Stephen. I welcome your response to that. But we have got a massive amount of young people in residential care just now, and that, given where we are, will that go down to allow us to have the economies of scale to just have 8 places? I don't know. And I know that historically, yes, it has is peaked and troughed in terms of numbers. So there's that one. There's also, I think, at the last committee, and maybe it wasn't loud enough, which is unusual for me, I know. And I asked that we write to Scottish Government to ask them to do something about dealing with the monopoly the private sector has in residential care homes in Scotland. You know, having our children and young people not farmed out, that's effectively, that isn't what you do, but that's what it looks like. They're just, where's the space, and we will try and find a space that meets their needs, and 2, our financial budget, our envelope, which is limited. Have we done that? If not, can we do that? Because they might want to take a leaf out of Westminster Government's book, because they're reviewing the private sector monopoly on care services in England and Wales just now. So they might want to look at that and see what they are doing and do something in Scotland, because this is not good enough. You know, the report's great. Not what you're doing is great, but what's happening in Scotland is a scandal. And we're doing our bit in Dumfries and Galloway to try and address that, which is fantastic. One, can be done at a pace that's a bit quicker than 18, 24 months. 2, when are we getting a report back to this committee, because there's no date there, and that's a bit concerning. And 3, is there a possibility of increasing the number of places in this region? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darwood. Take those points and time of the essence and the timing for the next report, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Darwood, thanks for the questions. Do my best to answer them all. It has taken a while to get this report to this stage back to this committee. And that's for 2 main reasons. One is it's an extremely complex whole system. And this report just references the potential building or commissioning of our own children's houses. We've previously reported on the whole system stuff that we're doing as well. Stuff, what a word. Really complex things within that. So that's the first reason. So we have had to look at an awful lot of data around individual children, young people, and their journeys, and we're continuing that work. We have benchmarked, and I was particularly pleased to hear Councillor Young, referenced in Aberdeenshire as an example, and having done some homework as well. So we've done a lot of that. The other element is also capacity. You know, we are, like every public sector service, we are extremely busy, and we have to prioritise what we have to prioritise on any given day, and that has had an impact. What I can say, though, is we're getting exceptionally strong support from colleagues across the council now, particularly finance, legal, procurement, etc. And that's been really instrumental in getting us to the stage we are, helping us get to the stage we are as well. So that one council approach is really paying dividends now. Hadn't put the time scale in here because I didn't have it at hand. So we are running effectively a parallel process, if you like. So it's the Capital Investment Programme Board, and we're using the Gateway process. So we will be having the final kind of Gateway 1 report going back to them. Avril, do we have that date as yet?
Not yet, but we're looking at August.
Looking at August. So we'll report back with a timeline, even if we just bring a timeline back to August committee, if we don't bring anything for decision up then. It won't be a decision, but we can get the firm timeline around that. In relation to can we be more ambitious? Well, the short answer is we can always be more ambitious, but what we've tried to balance with the work that we've done is that whole system in terms of what do we need to do in relation to foster care, what do we need to do in relation to early intervention, education, etc. And what are we doing there? So that's one element. The other part is also looking at the current market. Again, a word I don't like to use when I'm referring to children, but there is a market out there. And to introduce two of our own homes, potentially in competition with what's out there in the third sector in terms of a relatively small staff pool, we have to be mindful about what the impacts might be and whether we're successful at recruiting staff. So this isn't a set in stone position for me. This is, you know, going forward two, one in the east, one in the west, 4 beds each, as a starting point. Look at how successful we continue to be at bringing children and young people back into region, preferably to their own home or into a kinship arrangement or foster care, and continuously monitor this and see whether that 8 needs to become 2 or whether it needs to become 20. What I would also say, and it's in reference to a question Councillor Young asked that I didn't respond to, but it's important in response to your question, Councillor Dawood, and that is the types of placement. We will always need a specialist placement that we can provide locally, and the numbers of those, unfortunately, do tend to be, you know, reasonably high. You know, when you're looking at children with extremely complex needs, it does require an extremely, you know, complex service that we may not be able to provide ourselves. So hopefully I've covered your points there.
That's helpful, Stephen. Councillor, who have we got? Pardon me. Howie, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Much of what I was going to say has already been covered by Councillor Young, Councillor Dawood. Obviously, the benefits here of Spend to Save are clear. The added advantages, we're bringing our children back into our own area, but I'm glad to hear both the thoughts of Councillor Young and both Stephen on the location of these homes. It's important that they're located in towns where they have the continued support of families, siblings and any other services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howie. Also giving carers and families the access to the children should it be required. So thank you for that point. Councillor Davis, please.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if the Council have given any consideration into, obviously in the region we've got a lot of hotels, various buildings, external assets up for sale that are either leased or rented or freehold. Have the Council given any consideration to looking at these for potential buildings? Thanks.
Stephen Morgan, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Davis. Yes, we have. And to be very honest, my opinion in relation to being your Chief Social Work Officer is that the retrospective kind of fitting out of an existing building very rarely gives us the homely environment that we're looking for, particularly if that's an ex-hotel as an example, probably going to be far too big. The care inspectorate don't really register anything more than a 4-bedded unit either, in terms of, you know, it becomes a larger institution for children then, which isn't homely. So we absolutely have looked at that, and we're continuing looking across our estate as to what we have to see if anything would be suitable. But even in terms of efficiencies, the new build, in terms of, you know, being eco-friendly, etc., running costs into the future, a specific design where you've got line of sight to each of the rooms, etc., you're in much more control of. So we absolutely have looked at all of those different options. We wouldn't rule them out, but I will always give my professional opinion as to what's the best for the children, as opposed to, you know, the quickest or even cheapest option sometimes. But a retrofit's very rarely cheaper either.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. I suppose you could move it on to bed and breakfast so as well if something appropriate did happen to come up and it was quite modern, but that's another subject. So I appreciate you looking into that and think we all need to keep it in mind. Councillor Jameson, please.
Just a couple of points and a couple of questions, Stephen. On page 209, the second bullet point, it's fairly clear that that financial investment is pretty sound. So I would urge that we look at, if we can cost reduction of 2.6 million a year, you know, if a business was putting investment with that return on investment, it would be pretty sound. So it's certainly worth looking at the budget process and the gateway process just to put that case forward, because apart from the moral the moral incentive here, there's an economic incentive as well, clearly. And just on Lynn's point, yeah, I thought about existing buildings, etc., but I totally agree with you on the fact that these need to be purpose-built, not just for the residents, but also the staff. You know, whatever research has gone into the appropriate type of building, that's what we should do, and that may be something we need to accelerate as well as the build. So I'm in support of, like, I think it's a common across all members to try and go ahead with this. I'm not sure how we do it, but one, I would stress that this is a sound investment, and secondly, the pace of the building should include getting it right, getting the building right and the staffing right, so that when that building's up, it's appropriate and we've got the staff to do it, so that you know, there's no point in building a factory if you can't have the expertise in that factory. So these are the three questions I would ask you. How far on are you with arguing the case for the investment? And secondly, a plan to staff it and the research to make sure the building is fit for purpose at this given time.
So in terms of where we are about the argument for it, so I think the information in the report today is quite clear and comprehensive in terms of the strategic business case, the operational business case, etc. We have had support from colleagues across the capital investment programme as well, and they've analysed this and scrutinised it and agree. And I suppose that's one of the recommendations here, is to allow us to continue working within that framework to look at, you know, those options, further develop them, and then for this committee to make the decision on how we operate those moving forward. So in terms of staffing, timing, suitability, it's all part of that very, very rigorous capital programme that we do have. So yes, we're on track. This isn't a starting point as such. It's certainly not an ending point, but we're somewhere in the middle in terms of we've got the evidence now. It's been scrutinised by various people, including yourselves, and you know, I think you're ready to make a decision. Hopefully you're ready to make a decision today based on the paper in front of you.
And the structure of the building, I'm quite sure you've looked into that, because we can build a school and 10 years later it's no fit for purpose because things have changed. Your research into that, I'm quite sure you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, but it was quite important.
My colleagues who know things about bricks and mortar and the like have certainly done the homework and are looking into that, Councillor Jameson, yes.
Stephen, through yourself as chair, in option 2 on page 211, I was just wondering how members and yourselves as officers would feel if we just expanded on option 2, because I'm feeling in the room that we feel quite confident here with the report, but also the fact that we want Dumfries and Galloway to have a bit of control so that we can control the costs going forward, which is always very important in this day and age. When you're going out to external providers, these costs can very much change. So I'm just wondering if you could, how you'd feel about this, Stephen, and governance as well, if we just changed it to provide increased sufficiency within the region using Dumfries and Galloway property and assets and non-Dumfries and Galloway property and assets. So at least if a 4-bed purpose-built house came up for sale in the middle of, say, I'll just pick a town, Kirkcudbright, that would meet the needs of children, we could still look at that without ruling it out, because the way the report reads at the moment is that it's not included. I don't know how members would feel about that, but to me that would mean that looking forward, when this work's been done, we have all options open to us, which would seem crazy to exclude that, but I'll take your positive feedback. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose what I'm asking of committee today is to agree that we continue to work on all three of those options. And within that, I mean, if anything fortuitously came along, then we certainly wouldn't ignore it. That may well be covered, you know, via option 1 and option 2. So option 1, if there was an RSL property that we could repurpose, we could do that. In terms of utilising our own property and assets, then assets could be something that we don't currently have, but we could purchase in the future. So I think it is covered within that.
Okay, I'm happy. Any feedback from members on that? But I realise I've still got another Councillor Slater wishes to speak. So I'll let you come in first, Councillor Slater, and then we'll finish and just, I'll take on board any last comments before we agree to the recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I must admit that I've raised this as well in previous meetings, that we should be looking at our own buildings, because if you have that and they're bespoke built, then you can control the revenue and you're not being held over a barrel by outward costs and things like that. So I'm a great believer in it costs money to build something, but if you build it right and you can control your revenue, that's very important. And into the future, you can still control that revenue. So I'm quite happy that it's going to be hopefully done. But as another councillor said, it would be good to see maybe it running a little bit faster. So really, I'm quite in agreement with what you're going to try and do. Thank you.
Okay. Do any members have any further points or questions to make? Councillor Dorward, thank you.
Thank you for letting me back in, Chair. I understand the challenges of increasing or decreasing numbers, and we don't know what we don't know going forward. Can we therefore perhaps consider, when it says accommodating 8 young people, can we put at a minimum 8 young people, and that would give us the flexibility if we required to increase that, if that's reasonable, because what we're saying is 8 is the minimum, and that's what it looks like from what I'm reading. So that would give us, and the gateway process and capital investment and everybody else in the council who are pushing this hard, we would to look at increasing that if required, which I think would be very useful and beneficial. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and we need to make sure that's noted, as well as the fact that we could extend the search a little bit further, but as long as Stephen's happy with that through yourself. Yeah. Okay, well, members, I think we're happy with that. There's no further questions, I don't think. So thank you very much for the report. We're now going to go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 2.1, note the progress since committee on 24th of April 2025, and obviously await the next report, which we're due to see in August. Thank you for that, Avril. 2.2, agree to the principles of developing our own children's houses with the changes that we've made, as in the strategic and business needs paragraph 4.5 to 4.24. And finally, 2.3, agree that social work officers in partnership with finance develop options regarding an operating model and revenue consequences associated with those options at paragraph 4.45 for social work committee to agree at a future date. Thank you, members. Now, we've just got item 10 and 11. Would you rather keep going, Stephen, because you planned...
Keep going.
You keep going. Okay, so we'll keep going on. Is everyone happy with that? Item 10, no one needing a break. That's great. Housing options and homeless service update on performance and current pressures. This report provides an update on performance up until the end of December 24 and highlights the heightened risks and significant budget pressures posed by the ongoing high levels of homelessness presentations and the continued use of hotel accommodation to fulfil the Council's interim duty to accommodate. The report also provides an update on the steps taken with the Common Housing Register to improve movement into permanent accommodation for customers who've been assessed as unintentionally homeless and to whom the Council has a duty to provide permanent accommodation. Rebecca and Heather are here to answer any questions, members. Okay, members, thank you. Oh, Councillor Walters, please. Dorward as well. No, Councillor Walters first, thanks.
Thanks. And just a couple of points of clarification, really. On page 225 on Appendix 3, the comparison between available accommodation in 2025 and accommodation in 2022. I looked at this and thought, oh, this is actually good news, in that the available accommodation in 2025 is listed as 301 as a total, compared to 256 from 2022. But when I added up the total in the column of the different areas, it doesn't add up to 301. It adds up to 255, which is very similar to what it was in 2022. So I wonder if there was either the subtotals haven't all been included, or if it is a good news story that we have got 301 places of accommodation available, or the figures in that column weren't correct. Thanks. That's my question.
Okay, fair point. Thanks, Councillor Walters. Can you just hold with us to give the team a minute? And in the meantime, Councillor Dorward, can we come forward with your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's concerning Table 1 on page 214. Excuse me. Unsurprising that the indicator, the numbers are increasing year on year in terms of number of homeless applications taken, number of out-of-hours presentations, excuse me, number of homeless assessments, and we're only at the end of Q3, so we don't have Q4 figures in. So if I'm looking at that, and my arithmetic's basic stuff, but it looks like they'll be exceeding the figures from last year. If you add the Q4 figures in, given the trends, do we have the capacity? Are we managing this? Because one of the things that you mentioned, Stephen, earlier was that our sickness absence rates are increasing. Frontline staff deal with very, very challenging cases. Are we managing this well? Do we have the capacity? And we are breaching a number of indicators in terms of people in bed and breakfast and hotel accommodation. What is our plan going forward to work with our decreasing amount of registered social landlords, or the same amount of registered social landlords? It seems to be, it's down 2% on 2020-21. And the house building in Dumfries and Galloway isn't perhaps going as well as it could be, although some of it's going quite well. I know the plan, there is a plan in terms of how we deal with this, but I'm not seeing the plan working in terms of the figures that you're presenting to committee, because they're just getting worse. We have declared a housing crisis or a housing emergency. Is there any more we can be doing to look at that in a more granular or forensic way to ensure that we don't have an increase in figures next year, which would be really, really useful. And the other issue probably is Appendix 1, the main reason for page 221, main reason for homeless application reported to Scottish Government as declared by applicant. And it's very concerning that there's a massive, well, one of the biggest is, as was alluded to by my colleague earlier on, dispute within household, violent or abusive, dispute with household, relationship breakdown, non-violent, whatever that means, and fleeing domestic violence, which all seem very similar to me, but I don't know what the differences are. That's a massive number, and another significant number is those liberated from prison, presented as homeless. So I know it's a big question, and but what are we doing about, particularly about these individuals who leave because of household or violent, or households that are violent or abusive, with households and relationships breaking down that are non-violent, are fleeing domestic violence, which seems similar to the first one, and also with our prison population, how are we managing that? Because they are significantly high numbers that are causing a lot of the challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Durwood. I'll go to Rebecca and Avril. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durwood. Quite a lot to cover there. In terms of the end of year stats, I now do have the final stats for the end of the financial year, and the figure for the end of the year is 1,000, if I can find the right sheet, 1,215. So that would show that we're kind of like steady over the last 3 years. We're kind of holding. I would probably say we've got a finger in the dike, but there's still a lot of pressure behind it. So would be my take on that. In terms of are we managing that? Yes, we are, but only by the use of hotel accommodation. And there are plans in place to try and reduce the number of hotel accommodation that we're using over the next 2 to 3 years. But that has to be in a very managed way to ensure that we actually still meet our statutory duty to accommodate. In terms of the statistics for the reasons of homeless applications, so a dispute within the household, which is non-violent, basically is a relationship breakdown, so it's a marriage breakdown or it's a family breakdown where a young person's been asked to leave. And then the one with the difference between the fleeing domestic violence and the dispute is the domestic violence is a case that would be classed as domestic violence. The other one covers if there's other violence going on within the family. So that's the kind of difference. So yes, these figures are quite disturbing in terms of the domestic abuse ones. We do have a domestic abuse protocol to try and assist people who are coming down through homelessness who are subject to domestic abuse or coercive control, and we work very closely with partners within the Public Protection Partnership around that.
Thank you, Heather. I'm sorry sending the information down the wrong route earlier. Thanks for the report, and I know the hard work you do with the Public Protection Committee. Is that okay, Councillor Dorbridge? You happy with that? I've just got Rebecca coming in on the last question, though. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor. In terms of, I think, picking up on what Heather said in terms of what we're doing, we do manage it through, obviously, the use of hotel accommodation. We are looking to reduce that, and it's going to take time to turn the tide. So some of the pieces of work we're doing is we're just in the process of producing a paper for Health and Social Care Partnership colleagues, which will see us increase our prevention team, because absolutely that's where we need to concentrate our efforts. I mean, there's been many good things that have come from the Homeless Service joining social work, and that's particularly one of them, is that collaboration with colleagues in social work, for example. We've just recently moved the homeless team into Irish Street, particularly so they can be based with colleagues in children and families and colleagues in adult care. So what we're aiming for in terms of the prevention team is better links with occupational therapy, for example, for that low-level intervention when somebody may require a grab rail or something that will prevent them from having a fall, which will prevent them from being admitted to the hospital, which will prevent them from being a delayed discharge. So that's one of them. It's working with partners to ensure that when people are going into people's homes that they're picking up on other things that might be there. So for example, if we've got families who are experiencing difficulties with debt, for example, then that would potentially result in them becoming homeless into the future. So we're doing much more on that preventative agenda because as we've said before, that I think that's the only way that we're going to work through this one. In terms of the other thing that is the Homes First project that we have, which has been really successful, and that's looking at particularly people who have experienced a prison environment, for example. So we work with people, we provide the home first, and then we wrap the support around them to try and prevent that cycle of continuing homelessness, etc. So again, it is looking at that preventative measure moving forward. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Rebecca, for that clarification, and yourself, Heather. So we're just going to go back to Councillor Walter's point earlier on page 225 with Stephen will provide some clarification. Thanks, members.
Yeah, with support from Councillor Hill, we figured out that the total for Nithsdale should actually read 169 when you measure that across the way, and the total for Wigtown should read 76, which does give us a 301. So it's just as we've been updating the tables, we forgot to update the final column, so the figures were right. I'm surprised that, you know, at least 40 people have read this before we've spotted that, so I do apologise.
Yes, myself included. So thank you for that, Stephen. Are you okay with that, Councillor Walters?
Yeah, that's fine, because it confirms a good positive trend. Thanks.
That's kind. Thank you very much for that. And next is Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. The final sentence on page 231 reads, Graham has advised us since moving to Scotland, he had much more support and more people have helped him than ever before. Graham always engages fully with any support that we offer in his planning a fresh start and future for himself. Now, I'm sure we're all aware that people move to Scotland for a variety of reasons, better care for the elderly, better support for youngsters in school and so on. But I'm wondering, do we get many applications from other parts of the United Kingdom who declare themselves homeless and wants to relocate to Dumfries and Galloway?
Heather, are you okay to come in? Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor, for that. Yes, we do have presentations from elsewhere in the UK. However, there are conditions around whether that person would be eligible to make an application. One of the reasons we would accept an application would be if somebody was fleeing domestic violence. But other than that, they would need to have a link to the region for us to actually accept an application.
That's really helpful. Thanks very much, Heather.
And would it be possible to give a number of people from out with, say, our region who are submitting homeless applications to move into Dumfries and Galloway? Would it be possible to have the actual numbers of applications for this? Thank you.
Yes, it is possible to provide those figures. I don't have them to hand, but I can provide them after the meeting.
We'll get those out to you, Councillor Young, and the rest of the members of this committee. Is that okay through yourself, Stephen? Thank you. Final question, Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's regarding hotel accommodation. How does that work as regards costs? Is it, do you have a set price that you go to the hotel at, or does you have to negotiate with each hotel to get the costs? And if it's just one person or two person, how does that affect the costs? Does that increase it? Or it probably does, but I just asked a question about the costs and if you have to negotiate or you have a set fees. Thank you.
That's interesting. Stephen, could you answer that? Oh, Heather, pardon me again. Thank you, Heather.
No, thank you for your question. Originally, when we started to use hotel accommodation, we were procuring that on an ad hoc basis, and that was turning out to be really expensive for us as a service. So with colleagues within procurement, we now have commissioned contracts with a number of providers, which gives us a fixed cost per night, per room. And that's turning out to be more cost effective for us.
That's really great work. Thank you, Heather. And finally, Councillor Jordan, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wondered if you might be able to give a little information on those leaving the armed forces and how many armed forces leavers we have in temporary accommodation, please. Thank you.
Again, I would say I don't have those figures to hand, but I can provide them after the meeting.
That'd be great. Thank you. We'll look forward to receiving those. Thank you, Heather. So we can now go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 2.1, the high level of presentations and the associated risks to the Council as detailed in paragraphs 4.1 to 4.23, 4.31 and 4.32. And 2.2, the new guidance for staff when working with customers to complete their Section 5 referral to the Common Housing Register as detailed in 4.24 to 4.30 and Appendix 5. And now we go on to item number 11, which is the review of social work governance and assurance across Scotland. This is a really good report through Stephen, and it finds and presents the Care Inspectorate's recent national review of social work governance and assurance. It further provides a framework showing how social work governance and assurance is dealt with by the CSWO locally. So members, this afternoon, we would just like to invite you to discuss the content, and Stephen's here to answer any questions. Thanks. No one online, Claire? No. Okay, well, I would like to thank you for the report, Stephen. No, we do. Councillor Dorward, thanks.
Apologies, I thought I saw Councillor Jameson raising his hand, so I was waiting for that. But just a couple of, I think it's really useful background reporting for us to read in terms of social work across Scotland and where they are. I think this is actually from this page 239 from this stuff that's been picked out, and I think it's quite concerning in terms of One, social work influence was at times more limited within health and social care partnerships, where it had less equal level of representation, which is concerning given the amount of social care that councils provide. Why is that? Is that getting better? And the other thing that was extremely concerning was at page 240, 4.2, because this is not what social work is about, I don't think. I know enough social workers, I've not never been one, but I know enough to get this is not why they're in social work, is the staff were concerned that traditional relationship-based practice was being replaced by transactional or episodic engagement with people and children who use services. This was particularly the case with adult social work, which is probably reflective of where we are in terms of service provision and the decline in it. But from my recollection as a practitioner, as a nurse or whatever, millions of years ago, albeit, but social workers don't become social workers or to just have transactional input with people. They want to build relationships, they want to help people, they want to make a difference, they want to get people moving on. That is really, really concerning. I know that it's reporting the obvious and I'm stating the obvious, and it almost seems like, again, we're discussing this as opposed to making, commenting on it. It's not going to get any better. It's going to become more challenging because what we're looking at are digital solutions now, as well as, so we're going to have less relationship building or even less transactions with people face to face. It'll be more over the telephone or via a video link, and that's fine. That's how it goes. But will that affect, or could that affect, one, job satisfaction rates? Probably yes, it probably is. And two, could it affect sick absence as well? Thank you.
Very interesting, thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, so I thoroughly welcomed the Care Inspectorate review into social work governance and assurance because it's easy to share anecdotes with colleagues across the country in terms of the difficulties that we have, and I think this report sets out really clearly some of the issues for the social work profession in particular. And I say social work because this comments on social work, not the social care elements of things as well. So in terms of representation, Councillor Dorwood, it probably represents the fact that an awful lot of health services and managers came around IJB tables, less so, but the health and social care tables predominantly. And sometimes there's a quote in the report that struck me, and it said that social work has an equal voice, but an equal voice amongst 14 others. And that jumped out at me quite loudly in the report. And that's not a criticism. But like I said, the role of social work is based on a social model. Most health services are based on a medical model. And the two are quite often, conflicting. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's different ways to look at things. So this report highlights that there is an issue there. Chief social work officers across Scotland have highlighted this themselves, and we have regular meetings, and hence the governance document that attempts to influence what happens is absolutely there. Is it getting better? Well, no, because the structures and the systems remain the same, one could say. But moving on to the point that you said about social workers feeling as though they are actually doing transactional and episodic inputs with human beings, that goes against the core of what we believe in. It goes against our core values. It is particularly the case in adult social work and social care because we have a care management model predominantly. We still prefer to do relationship-based practice, strength-based practices, but in the enormity of the amount of people who require services and the want for social workers and other colleagues across the whole caring environment to do something positive for someone means that you get involved in that transactional episodic process. Does that mean people leave or become, unwell in the job? Probably is what I would say, but that's speculation because this report doesn't give me that level of detail. But just from a personal perspective, I'm a social worker and having been a frontline practitioner quite some time ago, I took great delight in building relationships and assisting people to improve their own outcomes. Our staff who are at the front line now have significantly less time to do so. Having said that, you mentioned digital. And what we can do with some digital things in relation to social work time is reduce bureaucracy and actually increase the time that they have. So I think it's well documented here and elsewhere that we have piloted Magic Notes and we're moving into the rollout phase now. What that does is it assists social workers to take notes in a different way and for them notes to be processed. So the social worker can actually spend time having a better conversation with the person that they're speaking to, and it gives them more time to do it. The digital stuff in social care is more contentious, but if used properly, it can free up the human contact to be more meaningful as well. So I wouldn't be negative about that. I would say let us explore all avenues that are open to us and take the positives from them where we can, but acknowledging the risk and the negatives that come with that. But if we keep doing what we currently do, we'll change nothing. Yeah. So that was a very wordy response, and I probably went off on a slight tangent, but I'm passionate about social work, and you've given me the forum to respond in a way.
Thank you for that, Stephen. We can hear the passion, absolutely. And I don't know how AI will impact social work going forward. Is that similar to pilot notes? I don't know, a discussion for later, but it's quite interesting. Yeah. So thank you very much, members. We can now go to the recommendations. I don't think there's anybody else, so thanks for the report, Stephen. We can now note 2.1, the review in Appendix 1 with highlights 4.1 to 4.3, and 2.2, the Chief Social Work Officer's Governance Framework at Appendix 2. So item 12, we'll move on to that one, is the Public Protection Committee minute of 11th of February 2025 for noting. And then finally, item number 13, any other business. I have no other business and would like to thank you all and everybody, all the officers as well, for your attendance and participation here today, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.